So, there's been a lot of projects generally out there using pencils, and I thought I'd dive into this idea. And over the last couple of months I've popped into a local pound shop whenever I've got spare cash, and I've just bought a pack or two of pencils. So I started with some of these plain HB pencils. I thought that's doable, but they're not particularly pretty, so we'll use them for something else. Then I bought these ones, which come in packs of 30, but they're a circular pencil, which doesn't really slot together that well. So I went back again and I bought these, which are more like the traditional hexagonal pencils. And in my stock of boxes and things, I've got a medium-sized hexagonal box. Now I've been doing some kind of difficult maths and working out on dimensions and that kind of thing. Okay, just because I've got two lots of pencils, I've thought I've done a bit more thinking and a bit more maths, and I've worked out that I can cover this one with the round pencils and then two of these with the hexagonal ones, which is a bit odd, but the maths works out in that way. So I'm going to do a lot more than I intended, but that's fine. Get them all done in one batch, and it's a lot easier to work on with. So I'm actually going to stick the pieces in the boxes as I do them, so that they all stay pretty much together. So I've got my blocks all marked up, and I've worked out the size of the side pieces and the main ones, so hopefully this should be enough. Hang on, that's a round one. That's a hex. Okay, that's a hex, that's a round. Okay, so I've taken off the blanking plate and I'm going to put in my zero clearance somewhat insert. I've got here a 14 TPI blade, which should be enough. I'll see how it goes for the first couple of cuts and maybe change it up to something else. So I've done all my main cuts, and now I'm working on the slightly fiddlier fitting kind of process. Now you could just stick your pencils to the side of the box. You'd need to sand off some of the varnish and the paint that's on the side to give it a decent key, but what I want is for it to actually hold on and resist, because I want to use a border as kind of a pushing point so that I can press everything in against it, and that adds a bit of security to it. So what I've done on these lid pieces, I've just cut through around about halfway with the scroll saw. Now I'm going through the process of very carefully splitting these. Now this wood is fairly cheap because these are cheap pencils, so it's not splitting exactly the way I want it to. So it's just a case of very carefully convincing it to splinter down, and where I've made that cut it's going to stop. So I'm just going to whittle off the rest here. Now I'm not too concerned about it being perfectly straight, because these faces are going to be against the box and you'll never see them. Okay, so these have all sat for about 48 hours and there's no movement at present in any of the pencils. So I hope that these are now solid enough to continue. So, one's got in one key, never mind. So yeah, I'm going to start working my way back through these. I'll start with this one because it was the most solid one to start with. So yeah. If you can hear that Batman tune in the background, that's a local sandwich supplier. So yeah, so I'm going to carry on with sanding. I'm not going to film it this time because I don't want to push my luck. Now obviously, as these are finished and painted, I'm not going to do anything to the sides of these ones. Just need to make sure that they are solid. Yeah, they're not going anywhere. They're going well so far. Halfway through. I kind of do expect there to be some serious fails here, but haven't yet come across any. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or they're just going to leap out at me later on. So it needs a bit. Actually, all looking pretty good. Now I've said that, I've got tape stuck to resin here. Oh, and I've lost an edge. Okay. Well, one fail. Kind of expecting more than one, so I'm fairly happy with that. So I've actually had to get these back out of the storage crates because I discovered when I was editing this that my camera had deleted the outro. So second time round, which is why these have got the price labels on them. So yeah, in the end I resorted to using some spray varnish to get a decent layer of finish on these. I'd given them 4 coats of water-based, but they were still really quite rough, and the grain was coming up still. So I gave them a good sanding back, and then 1 coat of spray varnish, job done. So future reference, spray varnish or resin would do a really good finish on these. The issue with spray varnish is it's got a bit of a smell to it, and that hangs around a while. So that's why I try and avoid using spray varnish on little things. But oh well, never mind. So I've got these as finished, and as I said, they've just come out of the crates where I store them for taking to the fairs. So considering I thought I wasn't going to have enough, I've got 4 boxes done, and I've got a little jar of leftover pencil pieces. So when I was working this out, I did some maths, and worked out that I'd have just enough. But somehow I've ended up with loads. I know I didn't do the sides of the 2 smaller ones, but that still doesn't account for all that I've got. But I'm not complaining. At some point in the future, hopefully, I will be getting some resin. That's kind of on the list of things to get. And I'll be using these to make some jewellery. So, and I've also got the points, the pencil points, which I think would make quite an interesting kind of jewellery. Possibly. So yeah, that's a project for the future. So I decided to shape in on my hexagonal box because I couldn't get down to reach some of the slightly lower down pencils, and I like the way it's turned out. I've ended up with kind of an inward shape and then kind of a nubbin at the middle. I was going to go all the way down, but I actually like that feeling. It's got a more of a textured feeling to it, actually, more yeah, a little bit more organic, I suppose. And it does give contrast to the rest of it, which is slightly smoother, and this feels nicer, shall we say. So yeah, I do like this one, and this one has already been kind of earmarked for a member of the family, so it may not be up for sale, but we shall see. It's in the box at the minute, or it will be back in the box. So yeah, I had some difficulties with the pencils because they're the cheap ones anyway, that as I was sanding down, the kind of paint on the outside was just kind of creeping around, so I had to spend a decent amount of time picking out the paint from all the gaps, which again, if I'd used resin and done it as a solid thing, it wouldn't have caused a problem. So live and learn, really. But these have all got a black felt lining, which is kind of standard. I tend to do dark colours on linings unless I'm doing a pattern fabric, and then some felt on the bottom and then foam on the bottom, which again is my standard. So yeah, it was a bit more fiddly and a little frustrating trying to get these done, but they've turned out pretty well. I'm debating whether or not to bring them back out of the boxes and actually run some resin into them, but I think that might just end up with a whole load of bubbles because these gaps aren't really open enough for the resin to sink in properly. So I think I'll leave them as is. I've got more pencil projects in the future, so yeah, that's this project finished. And I'll see you next week.